My name is Tony Bishop. I'm the owner of Connexis Search Group. We're a permanent placement recruiting firm that specializes in working with early stage and mid-sized companies. We mainly recruit in a healthcare arena. That's diagnostic testing, medical device, life science, biotech. Healthcare companies in general is where we spend most of our time, and our clients typically are early stage to mid-sized companies. We really enjoy partnering with those companies and helping them grow their teams. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about generating revenue. You guys have worked hard to get where you are, develop a product that's ready to be introduced to the market, and now how do you get the revenue coming in? How do you get the sales ramping up now that you have a great product? All right, so I did some research on this and looked at Entrepreneur Magazine, a couple of articles, and why some startups succeed and why most fail. And one of the top reasons was hiring the right team. And so you can see it was number 3 out of 20. They listed 20 different things that were critical to success, and this was based on 101 startup companies that they did postmortems on. And they found out that hiring the right team was number 3 of 20 most critical things to be successful. And then I put poor marketing up here as number 8 out of 20. Mainly today I'm going to talk to you about hiring the right team. That's what we do as a recruiting firm. We have expertise there. And I put poor marketing up there as well because we typically help a lot of our small startup companies get hire marketing personnel as well. All right, so here's the key. Technical founder and a business-oriented leader. Really, to be successful, you need both. You need a strong product development leader and you need a strong business leader. You need both people to be successful. And over the years of recruiting, I've been in this business 18 years now. I've seen this come true so many times. Just reflecting back on what they say, we run into this all the time. I'll give you an example. We have one company we started working with 8 years ago, and they are getting ready to do an IPO. It'll probably be the 4th quarter this year. They submitted all their paperwork. This company was really driven by a combination of 2 leaders. They had a technical founder who took a product or developed a product out of a university, and then they had a really good business leader who helped them commercialize. And I would say in this situation, the product was more of a me too, but they just had a great commercial team, and they built an incredible organization. And once they started selling product, then they kind of went back and got a more proprietary product. But they started off so strong on the business side, great sales team, very successful. 8 years later, I think they're 800 people now. Very little venture capital that they took on. They really did a good job of generating sales revenue so quick. So incredible story. And then on the other side, there's another company in the same space that the founder never let go of the company and always tried to run the company, and there was always a conflict between that person and the commercial team. So we know a lot of people in the commercial team, and there's just always been a conflict between the two, and the company is stagnant and really has never done anything. And so anytime we see a technical founder sometimes that wants to commercialize the team, sometimes, not always, but sometimes there's just a conflict there with the salespeople. Salespeople are so hard to relate to if you're not one of them, and it's a very delicate balance of getting them motivated to get out there and to be successful. And the way you have to manage them is just they're definitely high maintenance. So anyway, you definitely need both types of leaders. And then as far as how you define the roles, I mean, who's going to play what role, CEO, CTO, CSO, president, there's all kind of different titles you could use. But I think the main thing here is as a founder of the company, what role do you want to play? What good are you, what are you really good at? What do you enjoy doing? That's where you're going to excel. And so I think from there you have to really figure out what role do I want to play in this company? And then, you know, if the more clearly these roles are defined up front, then the more success you'll enjoy, and there'll be less conflict between you and the new person you bring in to help commercialize the company. And that means figuring out the equity early. That means figuring out the roles and responsibilities, who's going to do what, defining that, and then both parties sticking to whatever you guys have agreed on. So anyway, this is I know a topic that has to be worked out, so you really have to define the roles and determine what you want to do. All right, so let's say that now you have decided you do want to hire an executive, a CEO, or a president to come in and run your company. So let's look at hard skills. There's hard skills and soft skills, but here's the key to me is to make sure you get somebody who's experienced in your niche. So if you're a medical device company and you have a piece of capital equipment that's sold to cardiologists, then the best thing you can do is go find somebody who's sold capital into cardiologists into that space, or who's been an executive leading a team in that space, because then they have all the relationships. They can help the team underneath them be successful. There's been so many times when I've seen companies bring in executives who are not experienced in their niche. As a matter of fact, we're working with a company right now. It's a small startup. They've got a good product. I can't really assess the product 100%, but it looks like it's a very viable product. But the president and the CFO and a consultant that they're using to drive sales, none of them have experience in this niche. And so they were trying to hire a VP of sales. We've been working with them, and they're getting offers rejected because these VPs of sales realize that the executive team doesn't understand the market they're in, and they know that's going to slow them down and make them less effective. So make sure you hire somebody who knows your space. The more exact it is, the better. Sometimes that can't happen exactly, but try to match it up as closely as possible so that you can ensure success there. So anyway, strong sales and marketing experience. Obviously, that's why you're hiring this person, to help commercialize the business. If they've done it before, if they've been successful with another company before, then obviously that gives you the confidence they can do it for you. So many times I see small companies hire people who have never really been successful. They have the right resume and they look good on paper, and I know these people and I see them get placed, and it's like, this person's never been successful. They never have done it before. Get somebody, if you can, and that's why I have the target up here with the bullseye. I mean, the closer you can get to the bullseye, the more likely you are for success. So sometimes you might not be able to get right in the middle. Maybe you have to go the first ring out, but make sure that you get somebody who's been successful before, and then that will definitely help with the relationships with the venture capital, because if they recognize there's a leader on your team that has generated money for another venture capital group, then they're going to have more confidence in working with your company. So once again, find somebody who's been successful, and the closer to your environment, the better. All right, soft skills. This is probably a harder one to really assess, and so obviously it has to be a fit with the founder. So if you're going to be working with this person, you guys have to get along, and so the communication style is important. How well they collaborate with other people is important. Their leadership style is important, and this is one thing that's just really hard to evaluate, other than meeting with the person numerous times. You have to get to know them to really figure out if you're going to like them, if you're going to be able to work together, and how do you do that. So don't just do the standard interview, meeting in the office, meet for 2 hours talking. That's fine, you got to do that, but go to lunch, take them to a social, put them in a different social setting, take them to dinner, bring their spouse. All the spouses get together, you and your spouse and their spouse get together, and you guys have dinner, and ask your spouse for input on, hey, do you think this person and I would work well together? That's always a great way to figure out. There's nobody that knows you any better than your spouse, and they'll kind of get a vibe for the other person to see if you guys could work together. The other thing is, if you're not certain that this is the right person, and if you can do this, I mean, hey, get them to work for you for 3 months as a consultant, just to see if, before you dive head in, just hey, work together in a consulting environment for 3 months. The other thing is, you definitely want to, at some point in time, and we'll talk about this in interviewing, but if you can find out, if you know somebody who knows them, or maybe if you're using a recruiting firm, somebody can check their references or kind of do a covert reference to see what they're like. See how they are to work with. All right, let's think about this now. So far, we've decided that we are going to hire somebody to commercialize your team. We kind of know what we're looking for now as far as an executive that has more of a commercial operations background. And so now it's kind of time to start putting this into writing and coming up with a job description. So kind of define what you're looking for. Get it on paper so you know what you're looking for. And I would say the traditional job descriptions we've used in the past are typically not that effective, because if you think about it, they're really just a bunch of requirements on a piece of paper. PhD with 5 years experience. It's just basically, you make a list of requirements that they must have, but you're not really talking about what you want them to do. So what I would recommend is use performance objectives, and I'll show you some examples of what I'm talking about, but focus on what you want the person to achieve. Put that in writing so that when you start interviewing, you have a template to go off of to see if they are capable of doing what you want them to do. And usually it's 5 or 6 performance objectives for each position, so that's usually is enough to really define what you're looking for in a person. All right, so let me give you a job description example, and I know you guys have seen job descriptions posted on the internet, and most of them really have no sizzle, and they really are not effective in attracting candidates, especially in a market like it is now, where there's more jobs than there are people to fill them. Candidates they're passive; they don't have to take jobs, so the really good candidates are sitting back, and you have to kind of pursue them to get them. So let's look at a president title. Generate revenue by commercializing current products. So that's what you want them to do. We need someone to build a commercial organization to generate income by selling our existing products. So that's big picture. That's what we want them to do. Then you describe your company, Los Angeles-based diagnostics company that has recently developed a lung cancer test, is ready to commercialize their product in the U.S. The technical team has created a lab-developed test and has recently completed a 200-person clinical trial. All right, now here's the performance objective piece, and I put 4 here. These are just big picture ones. Work with the commercial and government payers to gain reimbursement. Hire appropriate consulting firm to assist with reimbursement strategy. And you could even put a time frame in this. You could complete in 1 year. Raise money as needed. Add sales and marketing expertise as needed to grow the business. And obviously that's where you're hiring this person, is to generate revenue through sales and marketing. And so it may be, licensing the product or whatever, but that's a key part, is the sales and marketing piece. And then work closely with the founder to ensure unity between sales and operations. We all know that those two have to work closely together in order to ensure success. We don't want any bickering between the two or finger pointing. So we want somebody who's is a collaborator, who can bring teams together and work in a matrix environment. So that is a performance review, or performance objectives that I would use. I would define that before I really started, and then now let's look next at compensation. So for a CEO, and here I put, it's a big range depending on the candidate. If you get somebody who's already been successful, then obviously they're going to have made some money in equity, and base salary will not be their focus. They'll be more excited about the equity. If you find somebody who's still trying to achieve success, who hasn't done it yet, then obviously they're going to have a bigger salary requirement, because they probably have, they don't have as much cash reserve. They probably just need money to maintain their style of living. The average of 130K base salary is what you see for seed or venture capital based companies with 7 million or less in funding. And this is information that I got from a company called Cruise Consulting, and I'll have their website at the end. You might want to look at this in more detail. But they basically have, I think they looked at 101 companies and have come up with this number. I mean, healthcare and biotech companies, obviously CEOs and those companies are paid more than most other companies. All right, so I want to show you the this little graph here where they're showing the average salary, the minimum salary, and the maximum salary. As you can see, from 0 to 200 million, total fundraising is 115K base salary. And then I won't read all this, but you can see as the more money they raise, obviously the average salary increases. And obviously, you know, they say here raise more, and then they pay them more. So obviously that's just how it works. The more money that is raised, and obviously the more money that the CEO would or the president would receive. All right, and then next I want to look at the equity, because that's going to be a big part of the compensation package for anybody you bring on. We hope this is what they're going to get excited about. This is what you want them to get excited about, and hopefully not focus on the base salary so you can conserve your cash. So a professional CEO, if you see they're 5 to 10% is the equity they would have, and then a C-level person, other C-level chief commercial officer, chief technical officer, whatever, 2 to 5%. And obviously you see the founding CEO obviously is obviously a lot higher, but I want you to take a look at this. This is something that obviously we'll need to have at our disposal to get somebody to take a lower base and not be focused on the base salary. So, and I'll give you a link to this website where I gathered this information as well. All right, so now that you have determined that, hey, you are going to hire a CEO, you know exactly what you want them to do, you've got your job description written up, you know what you're going to need to pay them in base salary, you know what the equity is going to be, you've got all that lined up. Now, you know, how do you find the CEO? So number one, you use your network. Everybody has a network out there. You go through your network, you try to find people through your network, through referrals. The one thing I will caution that I do see happen is that sometimes people get so comfortable with somebody they know, they overlook the part going back to we said, hey, we want this person to be an expert in their niche. Do not settle. Just because you know somebody who's a CEO, they're a CEO, let's say with a different company, a different type of industry, do not hire that person to come to your small startup company. Everybody that comes to your company has to be an expert, especially in the early days. They've got to know your products inside and out. Otherwise, your company will struggle. All right, so job postings are another way to find people. You can put job postings out on the internet, and I will tell you this, that our company, we don't do job postings mainly because it's too passive. We're more active in going to find people. Job postings, you know, in a candidate driven market like it is right now, don't really attract the best candidates most of the time. Now, you got to try it because, hey, you could save the money. It'd be like winning a lottery ticket, you know. I mean, like winning the lottery. You know, it's easy to go buy a lottery ticket. You can pull in, buy a lottery ticket, and 5 minutes later you're done. And then, hey, who knows? Maybe you hit the jackpot. Doubtful, but you never know. Same thing with job postings. You got to have the same mentality. It doesn't take long to do them. They're probably worth a shot doing, but just don't expect a whole lot. There's you know, it's not very fruitful because the people who apply typically are not the right ones. Now the other fourth way is recruiters, which obviously I'm a little biased. I'm a recruiter. I think this is probably your best route to go because now you've hired a professional who works, you know, 10 hours a day and the Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, they go crazy. Recruiters are very driven people, and they're focused in getting you exactly what you want. And so they're going to, you order what you want, they're going to track these people down. A lot of times they know these candidates already if they're in that space. but it's a very proactive process of actually going and recruiting people for your company, convincing people to join your company. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about job postings. First of all, you got to have that effective job description that we talked about, the performance-based job description. You've already created that by now. So obviously you got to put that out there. It's creating excitement. It's not a checklist of requirements. You can post on industry-specific websites like Indeed, LinkedIn, maybe another place to post it. There's probably other sites that you guys look at, that you read, that you're interested in. Certainly can post it on those sites as well. I wouldn't spend a lot of money posting. I just there again, it's just not a favorite technique of mine, but there again, you probably need to give it a try. All right, so the pros of job posting: it's inexpensive. You know, some are free. Some of the sites that you post are going to be free. You get exposure to a lot of candidates, so there's a lot of people see it. It doesn't take a lot of time to post. All right, the cons: large number of unqualified candidates. So you're going to get tons of candidates who apply, and you're going to be dumbfounded. Is like, why did they apply to this job? They don't even have the right background, but you can't stop them. They're going to apply, and you got to get through those resumes. Now, beware of desperate candidates. I mean, desperate candidates are sometimes intriguing to hiring managers because they like it, that they're interested in their job, but that doesn't mean they're qualified to do your job. And then the other con of people who come to you that you don't know and that don't come through a recruiter, they're just hard to reference, so you don't really know anything about them. You don't, it's a very uneasy feeling not knowing anything about this person. As a recruiter, we do a lot of covert referencing because we know people who in our network who refer us to people and can tell us how well they've done in previous jobs. We get a comfort level from that, and I'm always uneasy if we get a candidate that comes to us that we don't know. I make my recruiters go through and we really vet them and try to figure out who they are in order to get comfortable with them. Alright, so recruiters. Now let's talk about recruiters and how to select. Number one, recruiters, just like your CEO or president, whoever's going to commercialize your business, recruiters have to have industry expertise also. If they don't understand your industry, then they have no business trying to help you. It's too complex to try to learn. They need to have a network in your industry and understand it. So make sure they have this. Reputation, obviously look at their track records, see how many people they place a year, look at some of their clients, get a list of clients, talk to a few people, do references on them. The sense of urgency, you need a recruiter who's got time to allocate to your search. Make sure that they're not overwhelmed with existing searches, that they can't spend time on your search, and that's just through asking a lot of questions. Ask the recruiter, hey, how many searches do your recruiters typically have at any one time? How many do you assign to each recruiter? We typically only give 2 searches per recruiter. Sometimes they have 3, but never 3 that are fresh starting from the very beginning. So you don't want your recruiters to be overwhelmed with a bunch of searches, because then if they are, they can't really dig in and spend the time they need to find the appropriate people. Types of searches: there's contingent and retained search firms. So some search firms divide themselves. Some people say we're retained only, some people say we're contingent only. I mean, obviously our firm, we do both, but we're going to talk a little bit more about the advantages and disadvantages of both types of searches and search firms, and then put a link here too for you so you can look at it's an article about 4 critical factors in choosing a recruiting firm. It'll help you pick the right search firm. All right, so let's talk about retained searches. Retained searches are usually the more expensive of the two versus contingency. Usually they ask for 1/3 of the candidate's total compensation, that's base and bonus, for the first year. Now that's the Ivy League, the Corn Ferries of the world, the Heidrick Struggles, so they're very expensive. They charge a lot of money, and sometimes they may not have the expertise that you need. So be careful with just because they're selling you on who they are, their name, their brand name, they may not be the right person for you. You got to go to a boutique firm in your niche sometimes. This is expensive. Don't really recommend it. That's more like for big Fortune 500 companies that are looking for executives. You have to pay a third of the money up front. You pay the next third after some event, usually after a period of time, 90 days, or after they delivered a few candidates. And then you pay the final third once once you hire somebody. You get a candidate guarantee of 6 to 12 months, which is good. But for the most part, this is expensive, and there's a lot of money that you have to put up front, and there's some risk associated with this, because if they don't deliver somebody for you and you've already paid them a third, then you may be out that money. There's one company in San Francisco that we're working with currently that had hired a recruiting firm, a retained firm, to do a search for them for a chief commercial officer. And the first chief commercial officer they placed lasted 11 months. The second one lasted 10 months. And so the guarantee didn't make any difference. 2 years into it, they haven't gotten this client the right candidate. So don't just focus on the guarantee, focus on getting the right recruiting firm that can deliver the right candidates. And then here's a article that's on our website about don't get burned on retained search. And I teach people, if you're going to do this, how to protect yourself so you don't lose money. There's some good information there. All right, so let's talk about contingency recruiting. 25% of the base salary is kind of the standard list price. Typically you can get a discount on that based on if you give them something in return. Give them an exclusive search. You really only want to work with one recruiter. You don't want to work with multiple recruiters. That's never a good thing. It just doesn't make sense. Work with somebody you trust, who you can partner with, because you're going to be working with them. They're going to be part of your team. They're going to be interacting with you on a 2 or 3 times a week and trying to get the right person in here. And it just takes a lot of time on both parties. You don't want 2 recruiters helping you. Typical guarantees are 90 to 180 days on the candidate. So if the candidate doesn't perform the way you want them to perform, then you let them go. You call a recruiting firm and they find somebody else for you. So they replace that candidate with another one. And then some recruiters will take part of their fee in equity. So we have done that with several of our early stage companies. They're trying to conserve cash. We believe in their company and what they're doing. So we're interested in taking equity as well. And we reduce our fee. You guys get to keep more of your cash. I know that you want to conserve as much cash as possible. So that's something that we do, and I know some other firms do as well. How to maximize results with recruiters. I mean, basically it's just consistent communication, just like anything else. You got to be engaged. You got to take their calls. You got to spend the time with them. You got to give them feedback on candidates that they have that you have interviewed, so they can calibrate their search. The more feedback you give them, the better they can hone in on exactly what you want. And you got to stay involved in the search. You can't just delegate this to somebody else and hope it gets done. You got to be the one driving the search. It's critical to your success. So you got to be involved in it from the very beginning to the very end. Part of it is too, you got to be involved in trying to help convince a candidate to come on board. Just keep in mind there's more jobs than there are candidates to go around, and so you're going to be recruiting people too. You're going to be convincing them to come to your company. So you got to show them that you care, that you're interested in them as a candidate as well. Our best hiring managers are the ones that are active in the search and engaged with the candidates. All right, so let's talk a little bit about interviewing. So now that we have, you've decided you're going to hire this person. You've created your job description based on performance objectives. You decided, let's say you decided you wanted to use a recruiting firm, or whatever way you have decided to find candidates. Now at some point in time you got to interview these people. If you're using a recruiting firm, then they're going to be doing the first interview for you and giving you feedback on what they think and their observations. And you might want to ask the recruiters, hey, what style of interviewing do you use? We work with a gentleman, we read his book, Lou Adler, and I'll put a link at the end of this presentation for Lou, because he has a very detailed process of interviewing. Now it's if you started from scratch and started trying to read Lou's book and put this to work, it would take you some time. You probably don't have that much time, but ask people if they have a process. We've studied this book for over the last 12-18 months, and it's performance-based. Like we talked about the job description, you gotta know what you want this person to do, and then use a scorecard to keep track. So you can list out everything you're looking for that you want this person to have, and you can score that person as they go through the interview process. And we can get you some examples of scorecards. Sometimes we create these for our clients that are interested in having a scorecard to interview. It's certainly helpful when you have more than one decision maker where they can kind of compare notes. Performance-based interviewing techniques, there again, the premise is you just look and see what they've done in the past that translates to what you want to have done. So obviously if they've done it in the past and they have evidence of doing it in the past, then you have more confidence that they can do it in the future. Look for specific examples when you're doing this type of interviewing. Don't let people generalize with you. Make them give you specifics. You drill in, ask a lot of questions. All right, so discussing compensation when you're interviewing somebody, in California you can't ask them how much they make, and so a lot of times all we do is just we ask the candidate, hey, what are their compensation requirements? That's one way to ask. You're not asking them what they make, you're asking them what they would need to make. Or you can do it the other way. You can say, hey, listen, our client is willing to pay $145 base salary. They're going to have a bonus program, but the biggest part of this is the equity. There's going to be 5% equity in the company, which is going to be very significant to you down the road. Is that something you'd be interested in? So you could even ask that way. Now in other states, and I don't know about New York right now, I know New York's talking about this, but in other states you are allowed to ask what their current compensation is. Not a problem. We know how to handle the compensation conversations and how to negotiate when you get to that point. We actually handle the offer stage with our clients. So first question, I suppose the most significant or the best question, if you only have one, is to find out, ask them, hey, what are you most proud of? What is your most significant accomplishment at your previous company? And then once they tell you, then you start digging in and finding out all the circumstances beneath that. So you dig in and find out what kind of resources do they have to achieve those goals? What were the results? Hey, what did they do? What did they do to create the results? Go through detail with them to find out exactly the processes they put in place to achieve those. So here's an example of somebody who has introduced you could give them an example. Say, hey, we need somebody that has introduced a new product to a market and has generated at least $2 million in sales in the first year. And then you can basically just ask them to tell you about an accomplishment that was similar to that, and then dig in. How did you accomplish this task? What were the results? What resources did you have? And there again, this is based off a book that we use by Lou Adler. He's got a great techniques. So interviewing, is a lot to go through in interviewing, but the main thing is one, have they been successful in the past? Does it translate to what you're currently doing? And then, are they motivated to do the work? So is the work that you have for them motivating to them? Because without the motivation, people are not going to do the job. And so you need to make sure that they're competent and motivated to do exactly the job that you have. And then obviously work environment is critical. In other words, you got to match work environments. Just because somebody's been successful at a medium-sized company doesn't mean they can be successful at an early stage company. So when I say work environment, it's more the circumstances around the environment they're going to be in that dictates their success or failure. So anyways, a lot to go through. Obviously after interviewing, you could get into, we could start talking about making the offer, getting the offer accepted. A lot of times if you work with a recruiting firm, they can help you with that. That's what they do. They actually will negotiate the offer and be the middleman. But anyway, I hope that helps. I know it's we've gone fast. We covered a lot. If you have any questions, please let me know. I just want to acknowledge Lou Adler. He's great at interview strategies, Cruise Consulting. Use some of their information as far as the base salaries and the equity. And then if you have any questions that I can answer, my name's Tony Bishop. I'm the CEO of Connexis Search Group. You can see my email. You're welcome to email me. That's my number. Call me, text me, and then that's our website. Wish you success. I know you guys have worked hard to get to where you are now, and like I say, over the years I've seen so many companies that have made it, and I've seen so many companies that have failed. And I think the main thing is it's really just to get the right commercial team in there, somebody who can go out there and help you generate revenue. So I wish you success, and if I can be of any assistance, please let me know.